begin their public sale, and that'll go through the 15th of February. Now, TE Foods International is already an existing company that has a supply chain traceability operation within Vietnam, and they're looking at expanding into Hungary, Vietnam, and Switzerland. And then they're also looking to secure contracts in Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, and South Africa. These are countries that have been identified as having fresh food supply chain problems. So they're looking to focus on the livestock, such as cows, pigs, chickens, sheep, goats, things that are consumed by people, as well as produce. And these are items in these emerging countries that have a lot of lack of trust between consumers and suppliers. There's many lawsuits. There's been many hospitalizations and deaths as a result of mishandled food, mislabeled food, things that are considered food fraud. If you live in a first world country, you probably don't have to worry about most of these things. You can go down to most grocery stores and pick up food that is really the cream of the crop. But in these countries, the average consumer doesn't have the transparency and that trust to know that the food that they're picking up is actually going to be what is advertised. So let's go in and talk about their process, because this is actually, despite being something that may not be technologically interesting to most investors, there's a need for this. So pay attention here as we dive into it. So they're going to use the blockchain ledger as a means of information, of being able to encode bits of data on actual living livestock, all the way from when the farmer raises that baby calf, for example, trades that to another farmer who puts it out to pasture and then takes it and puts it in a holding pen and all that to fatten it up and get it ready for slaughter. So a little bit of a brutal concept if you're not really into eating meat, but so let's think about the steps that go into that. You know, the calf is born and it's at a farm. The rancher documents this cattle. Currently, they don't really do much more than keep a head count. Then they may or may not give them antibiotics and vaccines. They may or may not treat that animal for a specific disease, and that gets lumped into the herd all the way up until when it gets handed off to the next farmer, potentially, who doesn't know anything about that cattle on a particular basis, treats it again for the same diseases it's already been immunized for, pumps it full of more antibiotics, and then doesn't know its health history and then sells it to slaughter. That animal then gets packaged and put on the shelves as a cut of beef or some ground beef, what have you, and we don't know really anything about it. So we want to be able to trace a lot of key things, some of which is the health of the animal. If we want to trace disease outbreaks, to be able to locate specific animals and get data on how outbreaks are occurring within livestock for scientific reasons, and that's of interest for profitability in the food sector, as well as a public health concern. And then also to make sure we don't waste money pumping them full of extra antibiotics or over using these antibiotics to treat cattle for diseases that they don't have or that they've already been treated for. That way it doesn't end up in your food, because the gross reality is everything that goes in to some degree is going to end up in your food. Now, that meat or produce, but typically I think a lot of the concerns come from the animal products, that then gets frozen or it gets packaged, it gets put in a warehouse, it gets put on a truck, it gets shipped to a store, and it's got a specific sell-by date. A government agency inspected it, given it a rating. We want to be able to know what that rating actually is when it gets to the shelves. We don't want somebody to then take grade B meat, repackage it as prime or whatever the example might be in that country, and then mislabel that food for an additional markup or profit, or take something that is past its expiration date, relabel it with a new expiration date because it looks fine to them, and then sell it to a consumer who doesn't know it any better, and then they end up hospitalized, or worst case, they may even die from that. So this is really important. So what they're going to do is they're going to create the information system of which farmers, government agencies, supply chain companies, and retailers and consumers are going to be able to participate in. So the token, which will be an ERC20 token, is going to use the Ethereum blockchain for coding the information, and then that information will be passed back and forth using these tokens as a medium. Now, consumers, to get them involved in the cycle, will be able to earn tokens by providing feedback on the goods, these fresh livestock products and produce, and they'll be able to provide feedback into the information system and earn tokens on their end. But the supply chain operators, the ranchers, and so on and so forth, for the most part, will be paying into the system as participation. Some of them will be getting paid for providing information as well. So it's really becoming a commodity that helps facilitate the trade of information and incentivize the trade of information within the TE Foods ecosystem. So they've already been in business for about 2 years. They started in 2015 and had already developed the TE Food centralized traceability solution in Vietnam. What they're looking to do here is to decentralize it. Oddly enough, the irony is that they're going to build consumer trust by making a trustless system, right? If you've followed some of the lingo, Ethereum is a trustless token system, meaning that I don't have to have trust in you. The blockchain keeps us honest and it passes the information through without bias or corruption. So they're looking to decentralize that and get that onto the blockchain. It's already been implemented within Vietnam, and then it's looking very soon to expand into Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, and South Africa. And they're actually already in negotiations right now with those countries to begin implementation. So it's something that could come into play very quickly, and it's already been in operation since Q4 2016, basically a whole 12 months. They've already garnered 6,000 businesses that are working along with them, and some international organizations that have a vested interest in the supply chain and handling and inspection of food. And let's take a look at their website since we have that up. There you can sign up for the whitelist to be included on their token sale, which starts on January 8th. So right here they go over some statistics where they're already working with 6,000 plus companies, because they're still adding to that. They're a growing business doing a lot of B2B. They're handling currently 400,000 transactions per day, and the food that they're dealing with is reaching 30 million people within Vietnam. You got to keep that in mind, that this is pretty much just contained to Vietnam. So they're really already within the food infrastructure within that country. So they've got a proof of concept. They're ready to just scale it up and roll it out. You could see that QR code that was on that crab in one of the preview images that went by to kind of show how the information is going to be consumed, the QR code there on the eggs, things like that. So that's something that, now that cell phones are within the grasp of everybody pretty much in these emerging countries, they'll be able to scan that sticker there on that pork, pass information back all the way up the supply chain, and they can find out where the information broke down, where did something go wrong with the handling or what have you with that food. So right now, here's the supply chain. They're going to break it down for you. You have the primary farmer who's producing the produce or the livestock, and then they're going to enter some information, and then that's going to be passed on to a transporter who's then going to take that animal or food to the food producer, and then more information gets put in there and it goes to the wholesaler once it's packaged, and then it gets transported again and more information, and then it gets to the retailer, and then the customer rates the food at the end of the transaction. So in a perfect world, in the real ecosystem, everybody up until the retailer, including the retailer, should be entering information for control purposes and so that they're aware of what they're handling. The consumer, though, is going to be, not every consumer is going to be aware or properly incentivized to pass along information, but it will happen in a large scale. Especially as more of these tokens are being used to trade information, it's going to be a limited pool of tokens, so they'll become more and more valuable over a period of time, so consumers will want to be able to partake in this as the coins go up in value from the increased demand. All right, so the real meat and potatoes here, if we want to break it down, we'll go to their executive summary that's here on their website. So if you want to go to their website, it's ico.tefoodint.com. All right, so they're saying that they're making business profit by solving social problems. And what is TE Food? So TE Food is a successful farm-to-table livestock and fresh food traceability solution that's focusing on emerging markets. Since 2016, TE Food has been implemented in Vietnam. As a farm-to-table solution, TE Food tracks the items through the whole supply chain from farm, slaughterhouse, wholesaler, and retailer, and provides tools to both consumers and authorities to gain food history and food quality insights. TE Food has grown to over 6,000 plus business customers tracking 10,000 pigs, 200,000 chickens, and 2.5 million eggs daily. That's a big number. And in 2018, it will expand to track cattle, fish, and seafood, as well as fruits and vegetables. So they're increasing the scope of the different types of food products that they're getting involved with, even before they fully roll out the rest of their solution to their other emerging markets. Now, foodborne diseases around the world are accountable for the hospitalization of 700 million people and 400,000 deaths. That is an insane number because 700 million people is roughly double the population of the entire United States, and 400,000 deaths is basically wiping out a median city within some of these developed countries, like taking it completely off the map and stripping it down to no people. So that's a big deal when you think about it on a global level. And I assume those statistics are annual. They don't really specify, but usually when statistics are quoted, they're usually on an annual basis, but I could be wrong since there's no basis there, so don't quote me on that. Now, the global food traceability solution market, which is the market that TE Foods is operating in, is expected to reach a annual revenue stream of $15.1 billion within the next basically 3 years by 2021. So the compounded annual growth rate will be the highest in these emerging markets, which most of them are in Asia Pacific as well as Africa, and they do have South Africa on their list because that does already have some developed infrastructure. The rest of the world is expected to grow a little bit less than that region, but still there's projected growth in the entire industry of which TE Foods is looking to operate and expand within. So that's good news if you're looking to invest. Now, Altcoin Buzz does not give you this information to endorse this brand per se and suggest that you actually go out and take an investment in that. What we'd like you to do is to do some more research on your own. Be aware of the fact that this is an ICO that's going to come up in the very near future, and we want to be among the first to bring this information to you so that way you can have more time to get involved with it and not necessarily just become victim to the FOMO hype that a lot of these ICOs tend to bring with them, because a lot of them bring strong marketing tactics. They're basically doing direct response marketing, telemarketing, and infomercials to try to get people to feel like there's some hype behind it, high booming music, bright colors, things like that. So definitely dive into the information. You want to be looking at an ICO on at least this level of detail when you're looking to get into it. So TE Foods is going to provide the physical identification tools. You might have seen those QR tags that are going to be wrapped around chickens' ankles and wrapped around crabs, put through pigs' ears, and put on produce and things like that, cartons of eggs. So they're going to provide those, and that's going to be able to be scanned through QR codes. So, that same information that's on the QR code, just like some of our wallets, will be read through the blockchain through encryption. So it's not something that can be, easily manipulated by an end user or messed up by them too, or misinterpreted. So we're not really relying on inappropriate data entry unless somebody swapped tags, which could, I guess, be a potential threat in their system if I understand it properly. But I'm sure they've already kind of given that consideration. Since each QR code would be unique, you couldn't use it twice, which would be great. So once somebody's already scanned a chicken, for example, nobody else could scan that same chicken again because you purchased it, you consumed it. So it would prevent somebody from being able to duplicate and counterfeit these tags, which is great. That's brought to you through the multi-bit encryption and uniqueness of the blockchain. So in total, there's going to be a cap of 1 billion coins that are going to be issued within the TE Foods ecosystem. It's going to be called TE coin, so be on the lookout for it. We finally figured out what that ticker is going to be. And then right now during their token sale, which will be part of their ICO, they're going to raise 40% of those. So